You're on.
All right, I'd like to call to order our Brookfield Board of Finance special meeting of Wednesday, July 17th. Stand by pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, not present tonight are Dan and Eileen. So they're not here. Public comment, nobody's in the room with us. Communication and correspondence, we had none. So the approval of the meeting minutes.
I move that we approve the June 12th regular meeting minutes.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. 3. Any abstentions? Brian, 3-1. All right, on to you, Steve. Look how fast it is.
So I'm going to start with some good news. On the board is our new library patio. They did, let me turn the lights on.
They did a beautiful job on it.
Don't you think? So that's good. 846 Federal Road, anybody been downtown?
Which one's 846? I don't know the numbers.
I'm sorry?
Which one is 846?
It's next to the liquor store, just north of the Four Corners
yeah.
on the left.
It's the one with the
The
top.
one with the big
columns,
hole on
yeah.
its roof.
It's gone.
It's gone.
So what we did is Jojo, who owns the liquor store, bought the property. We expedited his demo permit. Normally you have to wait 30 days after you get the permit for people to complain or have a concern, especially with older buildings that could be historical. We expedited that and gave him permission to take the building down immediately, and he got right on it. He is either going to build a small apartment there, he said, or use it for parking. Anything he does will be better than what's there right now. So this has been a long time coming, and everybody's happy about that. Some of you may have heard we've been having some issues at Cadigan with the beach closing. The beach has been closed 10 days this year. What we do is we test every Tuesday now. The health department requires that we test. If the E. coli count is over 200 parts per million, we have to close immediately. It takes a day to get the test back. So that means we'd be closed Wednesday. And we can expedite the second test a little bit, but we have to wait till we get under 200. We just don't want our kids getting sick. The second reason we closed Cadigan, we learned this from experience over the past few years. If there is rain, it washes a lot of stuff into the lake, particularly E. coli from feces, mostly from birds, right? Particularly over the Cadigan Park across the street. So if it rains 1 inch, we close for a day. If it rains 2 inches, we close for 2 days. If it rains 3 inches or more, we have to close for 3 days. Our experience has shown that the tests stay high for that period of time. I'm not sure, this is just my opinion. Cadigan Park, that cove is about 10 feet deep. It's at its deepest, outside in the middle of the channel. It's secluded, it's tight, it gets very little water flow. Out in the main lake, you'll get wind, water is moving, boats are moving water, you get a distribution of everything in the water. Long-term, the viability of Cadigan as a beach is probably suspect. So Rosa Fernandez came to me. She has one of her kids is on the Muskrats, our swim team. I like that name. My kids were on the Muskrats. And she wants to explore options for Town Beach. She's thinking, well, could we use Lake Illinois? We do own property there. So I suggested to her, one, she talked to Laura Murphy, Director of Parks and Rec, and have that conversation. And then if she wants to pursue it, come up with your own committee, start to do some work, start to flesh it out. This is not a this year issue or problem. I mentioned John Lucas, who's here tonight. He has been supporting the idea of a skateboard park, and it's just concerned, interested parents working on that, right? And I think we need to keep that in our radar, right? We're not going to do anything this year, but the other thing we're going to do is we talked to New Milford, and they're gonna allow us to use Lynn Deming Park for our team to practice, at least one day a week. And we are gonna have discussions about them, about a joint team, a New Milford Brookfield team, because they do, we swim against other towns and stuff. It's truly rec. It's for kids. We don't care how fast you are. We just want you to go out and have fun. I hate to lose our team. Last year we had about 6 kids. This year we have 15 to 20. At one point when my kids were swimming on it, there were over 60 kids on the team. So it's a good thing. It's good for kids. So we'll keep you up to date on that. Our plan of conservation and development, we put $120,000 in the budget to hire a consultant. We got 3 bids in. One was $180,000. That's out. The other 2 are very viable candidates, are well-known organizations. They're going through an interview process right now, and then they will make we have a core team looking at it with planning, our purchasing agent, land use people, and they'll make a recommendation as to which firm we should hire, and we'll probably do that in the next 3 weeks, have the final firm hired. Marcia, we have some changes in the finance department. I'll let Marcia talk about that when she speaks. You may know the WPCA lifted the moratorium on sewage, on new sewage. People have been going in and getting permits. If you'd like, the WPCA, on their website, you can go on and you can see how much capacity they have, how much is being used, what's available, right? It's a real nice tool, especially for developers, so they don't have to. In conjunction with that, and similar to that, the zoning board, I talked to Curtis Timmerman, the chairman of the zoning board. I've talked to him since January. This is how I feel, and I don't know how other people feel. When I look at our current plan of conservation and development and read that, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. It's a really well done document, and a lot of it concentrates on the town center, what we want there, supermarket, park, all the things we want. And when I look at our plan of conservation and development, and I look at what's actually being built, I have a disconnect. What's being built doesn't seem to me, in my opinion, again, this is just my opinion, to be matching our plan of conservation and development. I think Curtis agreed with me, and the zoning board is going to take up the idea of a moratorium on new commercial multifamily dwellings in the town center area. You can only do it, you have to be very specific what you're going to do, while they look at the situation and hopefully get the new POCD, which should be finished by a year from October, right? I don't think that's a bad idea. If you look at the number of buildings that are already approved, it's a lot. It's a lot. So I think slower is better in this case, right? Different people, developers would agree with that, but the herons, you know, at the Board of Selectmen meeting, the Arts Commission came to the Board of Selectmen, and the Pocket Park in front of Dunkin' Donuts, they asked us if we could name it Heron Park. We said the entire board was in favor of that. After looking at the rules and regulations and ordinances, it seems that Parks and Rec is in charge of all parks in town, so they would have to approve that name, I think, and then shoot it to the Board of Selectmen for a final okey dokey. But the herons are actually, the artwork is actually going in this Saturday. When we got the herons, we realized that they were not structurally to a level that we could trust that they would stay there in a high wind. So we had to get an engineer. We had money in the budget. We got an engineer. These are going to be put in. It's going to be built properly. And I have to say, I think they're good bets. So if you want to, there's going to be an unveiling. I'm sure you'll get an invite. I think it's on a Tuesday in about 2 weeks. I guess they're going to take a little thing, maybe lift it off. It'll be great. The pickleball courts. Do you remember we had the discussion about the 1 foot difference in height, and we had to level pickleball courts in here? But then, because we're moving more than 400 square feet of dirt, we had to get a permit. We got the permit. Then the problem became they want to bring their equipment in through behind the police station. We have septic fields there. We have other things underground. We're going So now we're going to have to come in through the brush yard. We're going to have to cut some brush down and remove one tree to allow that equipment to come in, but we can't have our infrastructure being destroyed. They're going to start next week. The goal is to have the pickleball courts laid, the actual courts laid, end of August, first week of September. If we do that, then probably those courts will be available to be used sometimes towards the end of September. So that's a good thing. Streetscape Phase 7 is moving ahead, the design. We're going into the full design phase. We have to get approvals from the state on the design. That is a process in and of itself. We anticipate, and this is where the new supermarket is going, across the street, right along Federal Road there. We anticipate the construction will be next spring. We're not gonna be able to get it in this year. And remember,
We got the funding for that.
I'm sorry?
I didn't think we got the state funding.
Yes, it's 100% funded by either state grant, and the developer of the Emporium building, Paul Scalzo, and his partners are paying for the design.
So
So
when
it's,
did that change? Because I remember that at one point.
It wasn't in place during budget time.
Yeah.
And so maybe a month ago or 2 months ago, we found out that we got it.
got what?
Got the state
The
funding.
Westcog approved our funding.
Yeah. So we're fully funded.
We missed the last meeting.
Funded 100% with state money, and the design, the only thing the state money will not pay for is design. The developer, Paul Scalzo, is paying for that. I think it was $53,000. LOTSIP grants are opening next month, right? Bids, you can go make a bid for your LOTSIP project. So if anybody here is a capital improvement project that they think we should do, we're looking for ideas. It's a competitive bidding, but not so competitive. We usually get something. So it's up to $4 million you can get in LOTSIP. It does require a 20% match. So we'll find some projects that we can do, and then we'll bring them before all awards. Electricity, I don't know if you're aware of this. Pura gave Eversource an increase in commercial accounts for their delivery service. Remember, the poles they're delivering, not the electricity itself, of up to 57%. That is going to be between 240 right now and 260,000 we're estimating. Marshall will go over the numbers a little bit more. I met with a consultant today from CCM and Triton Energy, and what they told us today is that increase for commercial users will be between 20 and 57%, depending on, there are so many factors. When they measure your peak load, what your peak load is, the consultant said, it's dozens of factors that go into it. He thought the town should expect about a 50% increase. So we are estimating on the high end at 57, just in case. The town did get one notification on this. I got an email from Eversource on February 16th. And the title of the email was Eversource working to save customers money. Okay. I opened it, it's 4 paragraphs of happy stuff, and I opened up the attachment that they had, and it was mostly about residential, and there was one small line where they said they had requested an increase up to 57%. In talking to the consultant today, he said every single town he's talking to, he works for CCM, and that's all he does is work with towns. He said every single town was caught flat-footed. No one knew about this. Eversource did a really good job of flying this one under the radar. So it is what it is. We're going to have to work through it. I'm sure we will be able to. On the good news, with the fire department, we agreed that they're going to begin to work using the town's payment system on Munis. Marsh has met with them a couple times and met with him again today, met with Lou today. That's moving forward. We thank the fire department for that. I think while there may be some teething pains, which there always are when you're going to a new system, we're fully committed to supporting them and helping them. I think they have that comfort level with us now, and I think that will help a heck of a lot, especially when we go to next budgets. And that's it for my report, unless you have any questions.
Thank you.
Just reach out to Steve Harding about the electric.
Yeah, I'm sure he got caught flat-footed too.
I talked to him about it. He said, no way is that possibly true, in no way would the state allow that. And it must be numbers that are mixed up.
I'll reach out to Steve.
He said if you could give him correspondence, he'll go to the state people, the regulators, and to see what he can do to help us. But he couldn't believe that number, nor could he believe that Pura would approve a number that high.
I could see Pura approving a number that high. Remember when they wanted to come up with a 25% bump to pay for the nuclear plant decommissioning? And Pura shut them down. They said no.
Correct.
And so part of the argument was you had this plant up for 40 years. You should have been collecting a little bit of money every year, put in reserve to decommission this plant. You knew you were going to have to do that.
Correct.
And
So they
I
give
think-
their CEO a $20 million bonus.
So, right after the macro burst, remember we had trouble getting Eversource in here to help us? So I had, at that point in time, I had the governor's cell phone, and I called him up the next morning when they gave us like 8 crews, right, for the entire town. I said, hey, Governor, we have a real problem. And that night we got 180 crews. I went and read the Eversource annual report. I love annual reports. I'm sure Brian reads them too. On the front page of their report, in the chairman's letter, right, it says Eversource has beaten the S&P 500 every year for the last 10 years. You're a utility. You're not supposed to be beating the S&P 500. You're supposed to be returning a reasonable return to your investors, because which is lower than your average return, because you're guaranteed by government that you're going to make a profit. I thought that was outrageous, personally.
That's why I let Steve do a little battle for
Yes.
us.
Okay, that's it for
All
now.
right, thank you. Marcia?
All right.
Wait, before we go there, the Board of Ed has a meeting tonight, so we switched our meeting to this Wednesday, so we can get 4 people here, and they actually have a meeting tonight. So that's why they're not here. So go ahead, Marcia, on to you.
Marcia and I met with them. They don't have major changes right now, except for the electricity.
So regards to the year-end '24 information first, revenue, there's 2 new things to talk about in revenue. One is Karma, that under our miscellaneous revenue, they're our insurance company that, and they some years give us a rebate. And it has been in the area of about 20 grand. They are giving a rebate this year, but they haven't calculated the amount per town. So we should be expecting to hear about that soon. LoSAP, different from LOTSIP and LoSAP, we got a lot of them that all begin with low. But that is a grant that we get $165,000 for. And on June of 2020, for the year end 2024, they've changed their processes. It used to be we would have to say, oh, we're gonna spend it on the roads, here's the road we spent it on, and then they'd send us the 164. Now they actually send us the cash, and then we have to do the reporting. They're having a class on that next week. It doesn't look, significant. But one of the things they did last September was they said, wait a minute, that if you have a state grant, including LoSAP, you have to follow this new CHRO requirement. And what that says is if the state money is over, there's a little flow chart here, but if the bottom line is if the state money is over $50,000, that contractor has to have 25% of the contract the state money has to go, and I have a hard time reading this.
MBWE.
For
Minority
small
Women.
entrepreneurs, and then 25% of that, or 6.25% of the contract has to go to small and minority-owned businesses. Well, we had already had our contract in place, and so the reason I'm bringing it up now is we're looking for other things that we can get reimbursed for from LoSAP. They talk about, we've always used it for paving, but we have a list of items that we think would all qualify. Why I'm bringing it up is if they don't, the money carries over. So we're gonna give them this list of things we spent in 2024, and if they say, nah, we don't wanna pay this, or we don't wanna pay that, we may not get it in as revenue, or all of it in as revenue in 2024, but then we can get it in 2025. So that was just that, and if you look at the report that you have, I took it out of, just trying to be most conservative, I took it out of the projections for 2024 year end, and this is why.
And Surma's out or in?
It's in, we don't know the amount yet.
So you have it in at 20K?
Correct.
So when we go out to these bids for this type of project, who goes out to the bid? Does the state do it and we follow them, or do we do it?
Our public works.
So now we're
for
gonna
paving.
put this into all the bid
Yes,
documents.
and they
Yes.
know that,
Yes.
so Coachella, I think is the name of the
Coachella.
company that we use, that the next time we go out to bid, we're going to have to say, this is what you'll have to do. But, you know, if we do a $1.5 million contract for the year for all of our needs, this is only 25% of the state money, or about 40,000. To me, I would, you know, deal with this pain in the neck part in order to get the 1.5 million to work.
We'll figure out,
This
either
is
we'll
simple.
figure out another
Yeah.
No,
way to
this is
use
simple.
this money.
This is not, to find this is simple. I do this on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That we have to have trucking companies and our WMB, all that.
Yeah.
You can figure it out. It's
Yeah, it's not a big deal, it's just a big deal this year because the contract was already in place.
right, but it's carrying over to 2025. We're not losing money, it's just a
Correct.
delay.
We're not gonna
Yep.
lose it. And we hired Coachella before this requirement came out to us.
Yeah, it's
We'll
potentially
figure
a
it out.
delay.
We'll apply it somewhere else, or we'll get our contractors. Because the trucking companies know all,
That's what I'm saying, they got it all down to a science, trust
Yeah.
me.
All right, with respect to expenditures, we're still receiving in the bills, and working on closing the year. That my best estimates I can give you right now is payroll should be about 100,000 under budget is estimated. That's the police make up 25,000 of that. Their overtime is over budget, their police salaries are under budget. But the net would be about 25,000 under. The library is about 25,000 under, and a lot of the other ones, just, they're small amounts, but they would add up to about 50,000 under. Non-payroll that should be close to the budget, under budget, but close to the budget, not a big variance there. The Board of Ed, based on the report that they gave to their finance committee last week, maybe 45,000 under budget. And again, these are just estimates, the best estimates that we have at this time. So that would be about 150,000 under budget, which is about 1/5 of 1%.
Where does that tie into this letter that we have in our packet, that the 45,000? We have a letter in their packet.
Yep, so that we gave them 675, and I think that says 630.
629, 5568.
And that's the
So
45.
So that these numbers reflect that already.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
And, but that, again, that's our best guess at the time. We're not finding anything that doesn't have purchase orders. Generally, what we do find is the other way around, is that we have purchase orders out there and we don't spend the whole thing.
When does this get locked down, the actual?
July 31st.
Oh, we did talk about that the last meeting, that's a lockdown date. That's a hard date.
hard.
Capital update, that there's no known issues in cash capital, that bonded capital, that the Board of Ed might ask for a small transfer from one project to another. And we took money from them for thinking it was extra for their middle school electrical project, and then with the prices and the increases, they need a little bit more there, so they wanted to have it back. ARPA, we've got 2 open projects that we have to have spent by December 31st. Candlewood, their mobile accountability boards for $4,100, and then the police social services liaison, that we're paying his payroll and benefits through there, And it's projected to be used up by December 31st.
Does that imply all the other ARPA money has been spent to date, or just we're comfortable it will be?
This is the only thing that's not lost revenue.
But it's not lost revenue.
These are the two
Got it.
identified open projects that
Got
have
it.
to be
Not
spent.
lost
The
revenue.
rest we've sequestered underneath the rules legally into lost revenue.
Yep, and we'll have to, for the audit purposes, we'll have to tell the auditors, we want to say that we're using that money, and it's probably gonna be police wages, because that's the biggest chunk of wages, and there's no bidding rules or other rules on wages, so we've used that before. But we consider it lost revenue.
So you'll hear at some of the Board of Selectmen meetings, one of our select people saying we should put ARPA project, we can't guarantee it's gonna be done by 12/31, we lose the money.
Yep.
So if we commit it and we can't finish it, we lose it. So the way we did it was we got two committed that we know we can run out, the 53 is payroll, which is gonna run out, we know that, and the rest we sequestered away. So if anyone comes to you, why aren't we doing ARPA money?
Oh, I know.
We
Yeah.
sequestered it and done the right
That's why I was
thing.
surprised those were low.
Yeah, and the 53 is as of like June 25th. We haven't done the third quarter's, allocation of benefits to that. Payroll would have been out, but benefits haven't been out. So by June 30th, it'll be lower. All right, audit update, that we haven't heard back from them since last month. The final field work is still September 9th and 16th. We're working on, we can't close the books because we're still getting invoices in, so we're doing other things to try and help us with our timing. Revenue reconciliations, pension and OPEB reporting, capital assets, long-term debt, and just rolling forward the financial statements, just to keep us moving forward.
But there's no surprises in any of that that's been reported.
Nope,
Perfect.
no.
So before we go to next year, just make sure I got this, because it's still my first year. So revenue, we're coming in over $3 million, is that right? Roughly?
yes,
Round numbers,
the-
I'm talking round numbers. And then expense is we're gonna beat the budget by 100K, 150K. So that says our general fund will be higher than we thought when we built the budget by a little over 3 million?
No.
So we
Okay.
use some of that, we use some of that for capital with excess revenues.
Right.
But I think that we're probably 300, 400,000 higher than what we thought at the time we did the budget. I don't remember the exact amounts back then and now, but, so we will be higher than we thought. As far as we know, we still have, the final revenue for taxes we can't do until August 31st. It's kind of, if you think of it as the way the accounting works, it's the cash basis from September 1st to August 31st. So there'll be a little adjustment up or down there.
Right.
But, so we are slightly better than what we thought back then.
So when we talked about strategy, we said that when all's said and done, what we want to do, if there is, I don't know, overage is the right word, more than we expected, half we want to increase the general fund reserve amount, I don't use the right words, and half we'll decide if we want to spend it on something, right? So when will we know what that number is? Is it end of August? The specific number, is that,
We'll have a close number in mid-August because the expenses will be done. And then by the end of August, yes, we'll know because.
so for the September meeting,
Yep.
we can have that
Yes.
exact,
Absolutely,
The deltas
because-
is hard to count, I like the exact.
I have to have the financial statements for September 9th.
Okay, so September meeting, should go through that, I think.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. That's it,
All right.
sure.
And then on to this year, as Steve said, the electricity, so what they're saying that they sent a letter, the first time that this was mentioned, that besides in that thing back then, the first time this was mentioned was in an email saying Pura has approved the new rates, but didn't give the percent increase. That was May 24th. And then June 7th, they sent an email saying, oh, and we've got the new rates, and this is what's causing the increase, these 3 bullets that are here, the most indented ones. This is what's causing the increase, and here is, here are the rates, and they list 150 lines of rates that never said the 57%, but Steve sent our purchasing manager to this seminar from Eversource, and that was where they said, oh, it's 57%, and we said that can't be true, and so we heard it from Eversource. He went, the purchasing manager went back to Eversource, went to our consultant, both said yes, went to CCM. CCM hadn't heard anything about it. Board of Ed went to CABE, which is their association. They hadn't heard anything about it. The consultant today, which is now the 3rd one to confirm it, said, well, it's up to 57%, but they're thinking it might be 50%.
For towns.
For towns, based on when they use electricity and what have you. And it's not our personal ones, don't anyone get nervous about their personal bill, this is commercial.
But all
Those
commercial,
are only going
right?
up 40.
All commercial, not just,
I believe it's all commercial, not just
They
municipalities.
said all commercial.
And so, what they're saying,
If it costs a town $250, Costco and all of that, what it's costing,
Oh, that's.
it's a big money grab.
Well, maybe munis will be up to 57%, but other ones will be less.
yeah, and we've got to pay that $20 million bonus, but what they're saying is that there were costs for state mandated energy programs, and they didn't charge us that, because we said, oh, it's COVID, don't charge us, and they delayed it, and now they're gonna charge it, but they're gonna charge it over 10 months. And I wonder if, once this gets out, if someone's gonna say, wait a minute, we can't pay 57% more over 10 months, but maybe we pay 12% more over 4 years. And I don't know how all the regulations work and things, but once this hits, which it started July 1st, so we should see it in our August bills. It's supposed to go through April 30th, and then in their letter, they said rates may or may not come down on April 30th. They're not guaranteeing anything, so I don't know. But that's where we stand now.
That more than implies that some regulatory agency that approves this stuff has approved it if the rates have already gone up.
Pura has
Pura
approved it.
approved it. Looks like
You're
they
sure of that?
approved
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
It looks like they approved it in May. The costs would be $190,000 to the Board of Ed and $53,000 to the town. It's just our rough estimate at 57%. Other than that item, which is probably enough, we're not aware of any large items in the 2025 budget that at this time.
In fairness to this whole process, between Brian, myself, the purchasing manager, we were all in contact, had a lot of things going on. You guys were in contact with Eversource on a daily basis for a week. We were trying to figure out the kilowatt hours, switching the school to the town side. None of this was brought up at any point during those conversations. Eversource did a shady. And we can't get around it, we're gonna have to deal with it, and that's why we budgeted conservatively like we always have. We've never stretched our budget, even our revenues, we've conservative to handle these type of situations. It's something we're gonna have to handle, and we'll work with the Board of Ed as well, because we've always had an opinion of unexpected expenses are not to be punished the departments. We gotta figure it out as a town. We're not gonna punish the education for $190,000 because Eversource, and you know, Brian, we were in contact, they were going back and forth all the time, nobody declared this. We're not gonna punish the Board of Ed $190,000 because of this. We're gonna have to figure it out. They may have to help us somehow a little bit and squeeze a little somewhere, but we're not gonna shut the tap off either. And we're gonna have to get through it as a group.
The good thing is, we know it right now, 15 days into our year.
Right.
So we have 11 and a half months to manage it.
But we
not
do-
2 at the end.
Correct, but we do have the money, like
Yeah.
Brian said, we have extra money that we're gonna be dealing with the, because of the way we budget conservatively, not crazy conservative, but conservatively, we can handle these blips and not get hurt, so we're not gonna stop taps, we're not gonna stop running the business, or, you know, the town or the school, and you wanna comment as well on this,
Like you said, we're prepared.
Brian?
No, I mean, it's pretty shocking. I'm surprised this won't come out and create a ruckus, because we're just one small town. If this is happening across Connecticut, I can't imagine this isn't gonna blow up.
But the
So,
beauty is we're prepared, we
We
can
are, yeah,
handle
but
this,
yeah,
we are
if nothing
prepared.
happens.
Mary?
We always have a way to deal with things because of proper planning. It's just so interesting, like all that work beforehand, like, oh yeah, you know, kilowatt hours are gonna be the problem, and then they blow up delivery costs. So like, oh, we didn't get you the kilowatt hours, see how nice we are, and then bam.
yeah, so,
You know, it's,
You get a good point.
one thing we could do is, as we're looking at that on the revenues, to your point earlier, is we could make a transfer and say, you know, we did have a lot more revenues. Let's take 240,000 of that, put it in our capital non-recurring fund, and use that to offset this for that 1 year. So there's things that we could do to.
I think to Brian's point, though, that's why he wants a number in September, so
Absolutely,
we can
Yeah.
plan ahead like this and pick these pockets, just like you're saying, and utilize your brain and, you know, Steve and everybody on how we utilize that money to the best use of the taxpayers.
Yeah,
And we hope it's not going to be that big.
yeah.
You know.
Right.
And we haven't found anyone that knew about this, but the consultant had talked to a few towns.
And he said every town was caught flat-footed.
We're not putting any blame here. This was, like I said, Brian and I were involved with this intimately during the budget season.
It's crazy to say.
And we were working with, you know, the purchasing manager.
And we were back and forth with Eversource on an ongoing basis, and no one said to you, well, you're doing your budget, you know this is coming
That's
up.
what I'm saying. There's no blame. We're not gonna throw any, this is something that happened. We can't control it, but we can deal with it.
Yeah.
Done. Case closed.
There's no opportunity to change our delivery provider?
No,
No.
you can't change that.
They own the delivery
There's
network.
You
only
can
one
change
delivery
one
provider?
part of it,
Yeah.
right?
You can change the
Eversource.
service, that's the
Service.
We can
That's
change
the
our.
kilowatt, you can,
We can
Who's
change
using
who
kilowatts,
we
yeah.
buy our electricity from.
Right, but
We
not the
can't
delivery.
change who
The delivery.
delivers it.
right.
Deliver.
In fairness, the other way, when I did speak to Steve Arding Jr., the state mandates are crazy sometimes, and the state mandate might be like they have to have 25% nuclear, 50% solar, and they're putting these mandates on that are costing money to Eversource to get alternative energy that's still in the early stages. So it is an expensive process for them. Not 57% expensive, but he did say there are some things behind it that we don't see. You know, like
That they would have known
mandates.
about.
They did
long
know,
time ago.
right, they
It's back
knew
to
about
the
it.
first
He's
one.
not saying that, but he's saying that the actual cause is state mandated. It's not necessarily Eversource.
A fair bit of it is state mandated requirements put on Eversource. But they could have been much more open. They could have been much more,
Absolutely.
hey, guys, we know your budgets are coming up, come on.
Correct.
Well, it'd be good to know that if we're talking to whoever, because the state mandates, that's not going away.
No,
This
no.
catch-up of a previously not, paid for cost, that's a one-time thing, and you'd expect the rate to go down for
Down.
that. But if that's just a small piece of it, then it doesn't matter. If this mandate thing's a big or small piece, that would be good to know.
All right, next.
Any questions on any of the financials that you have, on anything financial that we can update you on? We'd be happy to
I
do
think
that.
we're good. Before we go any further, congratulations on being a
yes.
grandmother.
Thank you very much.
Okay, audit update, audit capital, we talked about. Old business, we're on to the discussion of the debt policy. We talked about this at the meeting while the two of you were not here. Marcia, you would have an update probably on this, if I know you, on change some wording.
See, of course, you sent out a new one, right?
Steve sent out a new one,
Okay.
yes.
My email's not working on the town side
Oh.
right now, so I gotta,
I can send it to your personal.
Yeah.
So based on the comments we got from the Board of Finance, when we first reviewed this, we made those updates to the policy. We'd like you to look at it, review it, and then give us further feedback. And then you guys can finalize that debt policy.
Yeah, I did do all that, so I only have two maybe three comments.
Go ahead.
The one is, you basically kind of said, look, we're gonna use debt for big stuff and pay-as-you-go for smaller stuff. I do think we gotta more specifically talk about using accumulated reserves or sinking funds, or whatever you wanna call it, because that's not really addressed in here, but we did talk about that being a key strategy for us, is build reserves so you can buy the new fire truck, the new whatever. So, I have an idea where to put it. It's not, it doesn't make a big change, but I just think that was kind of,
Okay.
Would that be part of the debt policy, or would that be a separate policy on reserves? Because putting reserves in is not really debt.
no, but it says the preferred means of financing projects is pay-as-you-go,
Yeah.
which, I mean, I think using accumulated reserves is a preferred way of doing it actually for some stuff. So I don't think it's a major change, but I just
It's
think we
number
gotta
5 you're
highlight
talking
it.
about, right?
It
Right
was
there.
it was actually the purpose of the policy section.
On the face of it, I would like to see
Oh.
that's a really good point, Brian. This, as our chairman often says, this board is probably not gonna be the same 5 years from now. And our goal here has always been to set policies, procedures to guide future boards of finance, right? And reserves is one of them. This board has always been very positive on reserves. There were many, many years where the town did not put a penny away in reserves for anything. So a policy on reserves is probably
Getting
a
that
good
in here
one,
is good, yeah.
because if a future board decides to change that, they would have to go through the process of changing that policy and
Right,
really
very
think about it,
explicitly.
and not just overnight say, we're not gonna do that anymore.
So I'll let Brian go to his second point
Yeah.
before I tap into
Well, you can
that.
do one if you want.
Okay, because I'm gonna tap into that. I threw out numbers of the percentages I would have liked to have seen, and you said we're above that, do we really want to do it? But my thing is exactly that. I want the numbers with the 3%, the 10% lower than what we're at now, because exactly what you just said, and my philosophy is too, is if we set it at 3.78, then 4 is not so bad, and people don't think about it. But if we set it at 3, then the 4% becomes a thinking point. It becomes more of a discussion point. And it doesn't mean it's a hard rule. It doesn't mean this is a law. But if we go to 3, then 4 becomes, do we really need this? Let's think about this. We're full point above what we said. We're at 3.78, 4 becomes, we got it 4, then it creeps to 4 1/4. And if we set it lower and try to work towards that, future people, it will be like, okay, we're above the 3. We gotta think about this. It's almost like you're saying, it brings a talking point to changing a policy.
Right.
And that meets more resistance than odds close.
You're right.
And
You're right.
3.784, you creep, it's that creep factor, and it's human nature, the creep factor. It's not anything bad or devious, it's close enough, and that's why my personal opinion was on the numbers, and we could maybe come to a middle road, 3.5 even, I don't know. But my thing is, I get we're over it now, I understand that, but yet we're going through a blip, and Brian has shown us as well that we're paying down our debt, we're gonna be lower coming up if we don't take on new debt, that we could reach that number. And again, it's not a law, it's not a state statute, it's our policy. It becomes a talking point. So when people are sitting around a table, it's not just a mute point, that's all. That's why I would consider, you segued me into that with your
Yeah.
debt policy. It's, it's hard to, or the reserve policy. It's hard to go against the policy if you don't have a good reason. If a good reason happens, that's a good reason and you make
Right.
the changes. But if it's not, it makes it more streamlined. So, okay, Brian, your
Yeah,
second point.
you just went to where I was going. I thought, I was more focused on the debt service target. But it's the same discussion you just had. Do you have the debt service, that little spreadsheet you put out, which was great? All the stuff you sent was great. Maybe it's not, maybe it's for writing, but it's in there somewhere.
Just, for some reason, I don't have headers here.
It's the one that, it's in here, says it's 10%. Right,
I just need to
the other
freeze
spreadsheet,
it.
I printed it out. Yeah, it's on the phone, yeah, just gotta scroll over here, right? There you go. So, right, so the policy said 10%, but if you look up into 2024, we've never been at 10%.
Correct.
So why would we set, I'll just give the same speech you just gave. So I thought that the numbers were too high here. And we should talk about how we decide what the right number is before we, lock this thing down. But I agree exactly with what you're saying. I thought the numbers were too high. And there could always be a valid reason to go above them.
Always.
But that's something you don't want to target to the highest number you've been at. And you're right, we're gonna creep up a little bit for the next couple of years.
But then you're gonna come back down.
Right, so there's a valid reason to creep up, and that's not to make the target. Yep.
That's where I was wrestling with this whole thing,
Yep,
Brian.
I agree.
Totally
Completely agree with that.
on board with that. Like, hey, and the numbers that I had thrown out, Newtown had their policy between 8 and 10, but they now changed their debt policy with the focus to 8.5, I think, is their number. And the other numbers I think we got from the audit somewhere at 3% on one of the Moody's or somewhere.
Standards and Poor's.
Standards of Poor's, 3% on the other side. So those are numbers that, and one of Monroe was using like 9% or something as their number. So these are numbers that other towns are living with. We know we took on debt with the school, but the town voted for it.
Yeah.
So this is a known.
If you look, Marcia has a report on the debt levels as a percentage,
Yeah.
and the three highest towns, us, New Fairfield,
Yeah.
and Middletown, have all built schools.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's
And that's
You have
why
an
they
$80
got
million
kissed.
budget, you build an $80 million school, you're gonna have a problem
Yeah.
with those numbers. The
It's
ratios.
a few years, it's just a few
It's
years.
temporary.
It's temporary. It's
Correct.
not- yeah. I am in agreement. I think we need to strive for better numbers. I think we make exceptions when we need to make exceptions, but otherwise,
Right. And future boards will have that power as well.
yes, absolutely.
Mary, your thoughts?
Yeah, want to set them conservative and also be a little realistic to what's coming down the pike too. Like, don't want to always be blowing up the numbers, like, well, we said 9, but wow, look, we're 10 and a half again, we're 10 and a quarter. Yeah, so I would think
Right,
about
the numbers
it.
have to reflect the fact that we do want and need to make investments.
Right.
So if the numbers only work if you never make an investment, that's not a good number.
Right.
No.
It's a very good point.
It seems like common sense, but a lot of people would argue with you on that.
Moody's has said that they have cut, especially in the Northeast with the old Yankees, they have cut people's rating because they didn't borrow when they needed to borrow.
Yes.
And they were, so just exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, you can put a town at risk. Bethel had this problem 15 to 20 years ago. Their Board of Finance absolutely refused to do any improvements to the schools. They almost got decertified by the Middle States Accreditation Society. And Moody's came after them too, because if your schools aren't certified, guess what? Your loan to value of the property in that town, your cost. And they finally, about 12 years ago, do you remember that, Brian? They finally started, put together a program and started spending the money and investing in their schools. It was terrible.
That's why I don't believe in 0%.
Water coming through
budgets.
the ceiling of classrooms while kids were sitting there, that kind of stuff.
And there's one more thing that I was actually going to add to your point, is that when we say the project should cost at least 100,000 individually or in aggregate for related items, I think the same thing applies. If we already are planning 5 years and 10 years ahead and saying, we're going to buy this truck in 2027, we're going to buy this in 2029, then maybe we say, we put a clause there saying if it was not already, reserves and the same thing. If we have already planned that we're going to do this, we're going to put money aside for it, then it doesn't, it's not part of our.
I don't think we're at the point, we are now putting good reserves away. We're not yet seeing the point when those reserves are helping us to not take debt on. You see what I mean?
No, but that's the same way we dealt with the roads.
The
turned it
roads,
to
I was going to
cash.
say the
Yep.
paving, right?
Chunk at it
We
every
did
year.
$1.5 million, we
Yes.
bonded, and it took us 8 years to get down to 0 to
Yep.
cash now. So this isn't gonna happen overnight, we
No.
know this.
Yeah.
And the reserves, you're right, it isn't gonna happen overnight, but we're getting better.
And when we get there, it is going to be much easier to do a lot of things.
And it smooths out the spending.
Yeah.
when we first started and trying to get the cash over, we did cut some of the reserves. When
We
you and I
did.
first came on board.
We did.
Reluctantly, that was the last cuts when we had to get down to a number that made sense to the
Yeah.
taxpayers.
Exactly.
As we've gotten better in this process, and we got the roads, we've got over hurdles,
Yeah.
we've now held firm on the reserves.
Yep.
We no longer attack them as a budgetary tool in our process.
Yes.
So we are getting better.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think we stick to that, and you're
I
right,
agree.
maybe there should be a reserve policy, as Brian said. I don't know if it goes in the debt policy, but.
No, just there has to be a reference to, if you've read this as it is, you shouldn't do reserves. There's no mechanism to do reserves. So it's gotta be at least put in here that that's a mechanism.
Yeah,
How you do it is a
a
different
segue
spot.
to, hey, reference
Right,
reserve
you can get more
policy.
specific on it,
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
Be honest, this is
And
not
that
my
way it
strong
is
point
related
with
to debt.
policies. This is not my,
Yeah.
No,
strong
even, I
point.
think the only thing I would add here is that if it was not met by a reserve or something,
Yeah,
a few words in there that says.
totally agree
that just
with
says-
both of y'all. I'm just
yeah.
saying, this isn't my strength. So if someone wants
Yeah.
to hit, this is out of my comfort zone policies. I could read contracts, but policies, I was never my strong.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think we'll work on that and put something in there, something along the lines of debt should be taken on for items that are not reserved for,
Or in combination with
or in
reserve.
combination
Are
with,
not planned,
right?
you know,
To have,
combination.
Brian raised a really good point. You know, we should have some mention of that because we are putting a lot of
Right.
money away in reserves,
And we wanna do
which
more.
is keeping us from having to take debt,
Right.
but they are combined in that sense. So we should have some language in there,
Yes.
I agree. All right, let us work on the language and we'll come back to the board.
There were two other things that were added, just about leasing and debt refunding, that we went to the bond council and just made sure we knew what the rules were on that. They're not highlighted in the charter or any place else, so we wanted to put them here on what the law is on that.
Okay.
Yeah, my last comment was, I think the budgeting and capital planning section's pretty weak. And it talks a little bit about the capital committee, but it's not really clear what they do. They mentioned, it says something about a 10-year plan, but there's no view of what that is. It's kind of good on the 5-year plan a little bit. It doesn't talk about being involved in the budget cycle. It talks about determining sources, which I don't think the capital committee has the capability to do necessarily, maybe potential sources, stuff like that. So I just think that section's a little weak. I can give you more offline about it maybe, but I just think that section needs to be
Okay.
just clarified a little bit.
Any other comments on this?
I think the lease one, does it say who approves leases?
Yeah.
The Board of Selectmen,
Town charter section you referenced, I thought.
Is that in the town charter actually?
yes,
I didn't.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
So I didn't even realize we had leases. It's like we have copier leases in the education budget, right? That's about the thing I saw.
We have, the only ones that are big enough for the financial statements, we have a threshold of 100,000 copier leases there and on our side. We have some that are, they're kind of two different accounting standards. The subscription services for like, that are like a lease, that we just don't address at all here, that, because the accounting is just new on that. But the police, that they're in a 5-year contract with the cameras and the tasers, and more, that's how things are switching over. And then the other leases are small, that postage machines at the school.
But all those are approved by the Board of Selectmen?
No, those are,
As long as there's a governance model for that stuff and it's already in there, then I'm fine. I just didn't know what it was.
There is.
Okay. Then-
And I did listen to the last meeting, but the coverage ratio of 120%, do we need to describe it? Because I couldn't Is that understood? If it is, then that's fine. I'm just, is it very clear, when do we have a coverage ratio of 120%?
Oh, and that was, and so that's a little unclear, that the 120% is when the borrowing is secured by revenue. And that's really the WPCA, that we would have to look at theirs and try and make sure that it's 120%. We had to, we couldn't say that for everything because other things are secured by revenue, like the Candlewood Lake Road assessment. There's debt and there's revenue. We're not allowed to make a profit, so that can only have 100% coverage and not even 101% coverage. So that was, and we have to, once we're happy with this, we do have to go to the boards like the WPCA and make sure that they're happy with this. We've gone through some of it with the attorney bond counsel. We would want to go through all of it with both our bond counsel, their attorney, our town attorney.
If we're gonna do it right.
Yeah, we don't want them disagreeing after the fact.
All right, we had no transfers in your presentation.
That's correct.
I don't see any other items come before the board except for our next meeting. Summertime is a tough time to get a whole bunch of people together. Did we decide on something, Mary?
August 7th?
August 7th, everybody was available.
August 7th. We're gonna move it a week up.
To August 7th?
August 7th.
So that's 2 days after the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Okay, that's good. Oh, just one thing. Marcia, you want to talk a little bit about changes in the finance department?
Oh,
Personnel? I said we were talking about that. Just quick.
That's other items that come before the board.
So we've had some changes that we did change. We've had, we need more capacity, and we've talked about this in prior budgets in the finance office. And instead of putting a new person in, which wasn't approved a few years ago, that we've changed the higher level person to a full-time and then the clerk position to a part-time, because we were trying to keep the clerk position busy. They're not an accountant, that trying to keep them busy with just stuff, so it's a full-time job. And it used to be a full-time job where that person only did payroll for 2 weeks. So we've done so much in efficiencies that payroll is now a 3-day job every other week, that instead of a 10-day job. We worked with the union. We made that a part-time job, payroll. We made the accountant position a full-time job that allows us to give you all these reports that you weren't getting before on all the different funds. Our deputy controller has resigned, that she's got a small child and like to be a stay-at-home mom. That can't fault her for that. It's probably the right decision and just hurts for us. That so her last day is tomorrow. Our current accountant is going to take that position. She is got a degree in accounting and an MBA, and is very good. So she will move up. Our current AP clerk is finishing her degree in accounting, and did the accountant job in one of the other local towns. So she's leaving the AP clerk position and moving to accountant. We've hired a part-time payroll person, a union position, who will start on Monday. And we're advertising internally this week, and so on Monday, we'll do an external advertisement for an AP clerk, a full-time union position, which I don't think we'll have a hard time filling.
Very good.
It's good as bad. We're losing somebody who's really, really good,
We are.
but we fully understand you want to be with your child. The demands are great. And so we have really qualified people to step up.
It's perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Alright.
the department, I have to say that I couldn't be more pleased with my staff in there. That
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, then hearing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Wait, we're still on.